Malcolm X said the future belongs to those who prepare for it today. So are you prepared for your next big leadership move? That's the mission of the 19th Annual Women's Leadership Conference on August 31st and September 1st at the MGM Grand Conference Center. Unite with a community of women and men, all professionals committed to growing their skills, their influence, and their impact. So they're ready to step into new horizons in their careers. Because great leaders never stop thinking, learning, and evolving. They're made, not born. To attend this year's Women's Leadership Conference, visit fwle.org today.
Today on CityCast Las Vegas, we sit down with the Nevada Secretary of State Francisco Aguilar to get his response to the Trump administration's recent claims about non-citizen voters in Nevada. Then our creative producer Jacob Solis joins me to help explain why so many Nevadans are defaulting on their student loan payments and how a new AI casino host platform could impact the hospitality industry. It's Wednesday, July 22nd. I'm Jesse Merrick, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Secretary Aguilar, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Let's just dive right into it, okay? The DOJ sent warning letters to every state, including Nevada, saying election officials could face criminal penalties if non-citizens vote in the midterms, and asked how every state would comply. What was your response to that?
I giggled, actually, because we get these love notes from the DOJ on a regular basis. And I was like, it actually has been a while since we received a notice from them. So I'm glad they're still thinking about us, and I'm glad that they know we're still alive. But all I can say is, look, Nevada has some of the most safest, secure, and accessible elections in the country. We are following the law. We are doing what we're supposed to be doing. And we're not going to jeopardize the safety and security of our elections for accessibility. They are not one or the other. They can be both. And the fact that we're doing that, MIT just released a study of the 50 states in our elections, and Nevada was second in that MIT list. So the fact that MIT thinks we're doing a phenomenal job here in Nevada, maybe they should send that report to the DOJ.
Yeah, MIT is full of smart folks, that's for sure. By you saying you giggled, you didn't take it as like a direct threat made towards you about potential jail time.
These people are full of empty threats. Everything is a threat to them. If I walk outside and it's sunny outside and I'm wearing sunscreen, that's a threat to them. So the fact that they continue to make these threats just makes me realize that they are not true leaders. What they're trying to do is sow chaos and distrust into the process because they know that Nevada is the road to the White House. And the fact that 26 elections are critical to the 28 election, and Nevada is going to decide who the next president of the United States is, and they want to be able to control our elections. And when I say control, it's more of like a theory. The fact that a certain individual wants to choose who his voters are rather than the voters choosing him. And if we think about that mantra or that thought process, you're going to start to see all of these trends of where they're trying to intimidate or create chaos within Nevada.
And I mean, one of the things that stood out from all of this is that the Trump administration actually did throw out a number saying 16,000 non-citizen voters voted in Nevada. I'm guessing you're refuting that, saying that's not true.
Well, look, you and I could put any number out into the aura or the universe and say, this is a number. Well, no, you have to provide proof. You have to provide the data set. You can't just make an allegation or a statement of fact without proving it. We've asked for this data. We've said, hey, share us the information. And what confuses me even more, I'm being sued because I will not give the federal government the voter information for our voters. I will not give them social security numbers. I will not give them driver's license because that's private information that a voter chose to give to the state of Nevada to register to vote. They didn't choose to give it to a third party. And when we've asked them, how are you going to use this data? Who's responsible for this data? How are you going to keep this data safe? In Nevada, we're a little bit on edge given the recent cyber attack in state government. So people want to know.
We have had our fair share of that, yeah.
They want to know that we are being diligent in protecting their private information. It's not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's an issue of just people wanting to protect their information. And so if they sue me because I won't give it to them. And then all of a sudden they have this data set to say we cross-referenced your voters and we know that these individuals are non-citizens and they're on the voter rolls. Okay, show me the proof.
And so I'm just curious, in terms of that number then, the 16,000, like if that isn't accurate, what is the reality then?
I don't think the reality is very high. First of all, to register to vote in Nevada, there is a pretty high level of proof of identity. Also, too, the voter has to acknowledge that they are a citizen and eligible to vote in Nevada. If not, they are committing a felony. And so that voter attestation is critical. But also, too, the fact that they have to prove their identity about who they are is critical in the process. And then we also do voter roll maintenance. And so after every election and prior to an election, we make sure that we only have eligible voters on our voter rolls. And then the Heritage Foundation ran a report on Nevada's election. They looked at a 10-year period, and they looked at options or instances of fraud. There were only about 11, and half of those were potential non-citizens who voted in our elections over a 10-year period out of millions and millions and millions of votes.
And so just to be clear, before we move on here, like you're saying that you do not know where that number for the DOJ is coming from.
No. And that's part of our response is explain to me how you got this number. What data set are you using? And why did you use this number if you can't share the background information with me?
So then, like, if that's the case, and you touched on it a bit earlier, but just to kind of power it home, I guess, from your perspective here, why do you think the Trump administration is doing this and making not only sending the letters out, but sending out those numbers like that 16,000 non-registered voters, or at least alluding to that?
Because they're trying to confuse voters. They're trying to intimidate voters, but they're also trying to force elections officials into compliance with a bunch of their nonsense policies about voter registration, about how the elections are run. They're trying to get rid of mail ballots, even though the president voted by mail in his last election in Florida. So the fact that they continue to do this is just crazy to me. But also think about Nevada. 30% of eligible voters in Nevada are Latino. And when you start talking about non-citizens being on voter rolls, look, I have a very Mexican name. There are a couple of us in the state of Nevada, but that's not me. I'm not them. I was born in the United States. My parents are Mexican, but just because I have a Mexican sounding name doesn't mean I'm a non-citizen. What it's also doing is those individuals who are the hardest working in our community, worried about putting food on their table because things are expensive because of this administration. They're worried about the cost of gas. They're worried about the education of their children. And then you start talking about all the complications around voting from their perspective. What you're going to do is put fear in these people so they don't turn out. I think 30% is a pretty big population in Nevada, and they should have a say what our state looks like and what the future of our country looks like. And I think that's the intent, is to get people to stay home, because we're going back to that basic premise of an individual trying to choose their voters rather than voters choosing them.
So as we look ahead to the future, I mean, where do things go from here? Do you expect these allegations to ramp up, before the midterms? Like, what's next?
I think, look, they really want to control the Secretary of State's office. We know that because the Secretary of State is going to be responsible for administering the 28 election. And the 28 election is critical to the future of this country. For the first time in a long time, both parties are going to have a nominee. There's no incumbent. And so whoever is selected on the Republican or Democratic side is going to be critical to the future of the country. And I think they're trying to place a heavy hand on that election early so that they can get the benefit of it. And that's not how this works. This works by giving everybody an opportunity. And the one time every American gets out to vote, it's the one time we're all equal as Americans. It doesn't matter how much money you have in your bank account. It doesn't matter what job title you have. It doesn't matter where you live, urban or rural or in a tribal land. It's the time where all of us as Americans are equal to have an equal say in what the future looks like.
And I mean, how do you think things went, for the primaries, in terms of this whole discussion here? Like, was it successful in that regard, I guess, again, based off of what we're talking about here?
I would say it's successful. Was turnout low? Yes, in Clark County. I wish turnout was a little bit higher. Washoe County had a 30% turnout, and that's just because they had some super competitive primary races. They had a competitive mayoral race in Reno. They had a competitive congressional race. Do I want more people to turn out to vote? Absolutely. But what was really good is that all of us were working together in Nevada to make sure our elections worked well. I was constantly talking to our sheriff in Clark County. He was keeping me posted on potential situations. I was keeping him posted. But the fact that we were all working across party lines to ensure that residents of Clark County had a good election experience.
And I know voting machines were partly implemented, to try and help voter transparency, thing like that. How do you think that went?
I think it went really well. Look, ballot marking devices are part of our transition, our upgrade of our election system. Yes, the machines look the same when you went into the polling location to cast your ballot, but the insides are completely different because now every voter, when they vote in person, gets an actual paper ballot where they get to verify all of their votes. Once they verify all of those votes, They take that paper ballot and they stick it in the tabulator themselves. Every vote in Nevada is backed up by a paper record. And that was one of the gripes they had after 2020 is, oh, we don't have paper records and Nevada's doing this and Nevada's doing that. Okay, how do we increase the security of our election, but also giving a better voter experience? And these ballot marking devices worked out really well. We tested them in the general in 24 in a couple counties. And the response was overwhelmingly positive that we said, hey, 17 county clerks, let's try to implement those for the 26 elections. And some grumbled because it was a lot of work. But the fact that we got it down and we have a process that everybody can be confident works, I think Nevada is in a good spot.
And just in terms of polling too, I mean, look, ICE is top of mind for us here in Southern Nevada right now, just given the recent incident that happened over at the airport. So are there any worries of ICE at the polls, come November?
Again, the conversations are taking place with local law enforcement. They're taking place with other agencies across the state. Nobody wants federal agents at polling locations. I mean, the governor even said it in a public environment, said, hey, I'm not in favor of this. This doesn't really help anybody. Again, because non-citizens are not voting. I think if ICE were to show up, they'd be wasting their time. But the damage they're doing is detrimental because they're preventing people from showing up to have a voice. And that's what we need to prevent. As Secretary of State, it's my job to be prepared for every potential situation. We're ready to go from a legal side. We have legal pleadings ready to go. We just need to fill in the blank of the plaintiff, the defendant, and the jurisdiction we're going to file. But then it's also, too, making sure we're working with law enforcement to know that, hey, this is not going to occur from Nevada's perspective, but also, too, in a communications, getting Nevadans to have a plan. We have universal mail ballot. You can vote from home. You can vote with your family. You can go through the ballot, talk about the candidates. And still, if you want to show up in person, go in a group. And also to the county, they have an obligation to make sure that they have enough capacity for the busiest times of day on election day. We know East Las Vegas, Latinos show up between 4 and 7 because they're showing up after work. So make sure that nobody has to wait in line, that they have a positive voting experience and they get their voice heard. So it's all of those things that come into play to one. It's like having a massive game plan. And the fact that the Raiders are stepping up again and they're going to open Allegiant Stadium for voters to come in and cast a vote, that's going to be fun, but it's also going to be an opportunity to provide a safe and secure environment.
Yeah, at the end of the day, like no matter what side of the political line you stand on, like you just want people to feel safe and their voices to be heard. I think at the end of the day, right? So, man, we really appreciate the time, Secretary Aguilar. Thank you for shedding a little bit of light on kind of what's going on and everything that goes along with that.
Thank you. And can I just make one suggestion? Is if voters could go to vote.nv.gov, update their voter information, make sure it's all accurate so that when we start mailing out mail ballots, it gets to the right place. But also, too, if they could give us their mobile number so we can text message them with updates in real time and they can know what's going on with the elections process.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice because let's be real, like people are really bad, at least myself, about checking the mail. And I always have my phone on me, like I'm sure everybody else does out there too. So a much easier way to get in touch with you to make sure you have the information you need. Secretary, again, thank you so much. We really appreciate the time.
Thank you, Jesse. Have a good one. Appreciate it.
You too. We'll be back with more after the break. With temperatures hitting triple digits, checking in on an aging parent or loved one becomes more than a nice gesture. It's about safety. Dehydration and heat exhaustion hit seniors fast, and a regular caregiver in-home means someone's actually there to notice the signs. And that's where Touching Hearts comes in. Touching Hearts at Home is a locally owned home care agency right here in the Las Vegas Valley. For them, care is both a promise and a practice, with caregivers who are trained, background checked, and thoughtfully matched to each family. Touching Hearts at Home serves seniors, people living at home with medical conditions or disabilities, or anyone over the age of 18 who can benefit from the help of a professional caregiver. So head to touchinghearts.com/Henderson to set up a free consultation, or give them a call at 702-514-0908. That's 702-514-0908. And say local, and they'll walk you through what support could look like for your family. And if you mention CityCast, you'll get 15% off your first month of service. All right, so now let's bring in our creative producer, Jacob Solis. Jacob, we know you're a political junkie. I know you had a chance to listen to our interview with Secretary Aguilar. I'm curious what some of your takeaways were from that conversation.
I think it's interesting, just the sense that, like, I wouldn't call it dismissive, but I think there's maybe a gulf between the way that regular people absorb the news about election stuff and election officials. I think we saw the Secretary of State be, I think, annoyed might be a word, that this keeps happening. So it is just interesting that there is this disconnect between what people say about Nevada elections and how they actually run, having voted in a couple and not really run into issues myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's an interesting way to go about it and read on the whole conversation. And I thought it was interesting that they're kind of taking a laughable approach to it. And honestly, I think that's the right approach to handle something like this when, you see what the Trump administration is setting out there and stuff. It's like a shocking headline and things like that. So I think they're just trying to kind of play it from afar and sit back and be like, okay, hey, this is nonsense. And then they go and ask for, the reality of the numbers or where they're getting that stat from. And as they said, the Trump administration's not responding back to them with that. That was something that really stuck out to me, where they're just kind of saying, hey, back up what you're saying, these claims with some hard numbers.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it's on the Secretary of State's office, to show that, elections are free and safe and secure and all that jazz. And I think to that end, they've sort of held up their end of the bargain. What I am interested in, and yes, exactly what you said, does the Trump administration at any point give information on how it even arrived at these numbers? Because they are almost so insane that they boggle the mind. I mean, that entire press conference, it's just sort of relitigated all these facts that have been overly litigated for years. And so truly, I am interested to see where the Trump administration tries to go next. Obviously, Donald Trump is going to continue to try to interfere with the midterm elections through various means, as we've seen. I'm just so curious to see literally what happens next.
Yeah. How it plays out is going to be fascinating to watch. And again, obviously, it's not going anywhere, like you said. One thing that's definitely not going anywhere is our first topic for us here today as well.
Oh, yeah.
That Nevada ranks pretty highly in terms of student loan default rate, which is kind of a sad story. Can you dig into kind of what the numbers are and what it means for us here in our state?
Yeah, that's right. So the Associated Press put out a big study, essentially, of all the different states and how student loan default rates have changed since the end of the SAVE plan last year. For those who don't remember, this was a Biden-era thing that was sort of quasi, everyone is like, oh, we're going to cancel the student loan debt. That didn't quite happen. The point of the SAVE plan was essentially to create an income-based repayment plan that would stretch it out, forgive a bunch of debt, but not all of it. That got caught up in the courts for years. And while it was in the courts, everyone's loans were basically in forbearance. So it was a pause. That pause ended last September, and the Trump administration has been trying to undo the SAVE plan in the time since. What it's meant in Nevada is that 25% of all student loan borrowers are in default.
25%. That's a quarter. That's crazy.
Yes. So that number, it jumped essentially 38,000 in Nevada for a total of 93,000. So that's where we get the 25%. When we're talking about how much these borrowers owe, it's about $2 billion, 886 million of which was just the people who defaulted since September. So it's a lot. It's a lot. If you look at other states, Nevada, basically there's only a handful of states that are worse, places like Mississippi, Louisiana, Puerto Rico, and that's basically it. Honestly, Nevada is pretty close to the top of the list. It is generally bad.
Yeah. And
I laugh because it's so bad.
Yeah, you kind of have to, right? In this situation, as horrible as it is. We're not laughing at the people that are dealing with this, because it's obviously a really scary issue.
It's awful.
I mean, you've seen some numbers thrown out there. I know someone went viral on TikTok saying her payment was $1,500 a month with a 17% interest rate. And that opens up a whole can of worms of why the hell is a company allowed to hand out a 17% interest rate to a teenager? That type of stuff is just wild, where fundamentally those types of things need to change. I think how these loans are structured, because that just feels predatory, right? But particularly here in Nevada, why do you think it's so bad? We're lumped in, like you said, with Mississippi and Louisiana, where we've been there kind of on the education front with them. So I guess maybe we shouldn't be totally shocked to be joining them now here in this area. But why exactly do you feel that it's such an issue for us here in Nevada?
It's fun. I get to whip out my higher education reporter hat again for
dipping back into those waters. Yeah.
But so the thing with Nevada is we generally have a very low higher education attainment rate, right? So people in Nevada generally do not get bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, so on and so forth. I think we have one of the lowest rates in the country, actually. That's because there's a lot of jobs on the Strip that don't require a college degree. Lots of them do, plenty of administrative jobs do, but lots of them do not. And so for a lot of people, it's a place of opportunity, frankly, right? It's a place where you do not need to go into debt to get a good job that is frankly going to set you up for life. And a lot of people have achieved the American dream in Las Vegas by working on the Strip in that way. There's a lot of trade jobs, service jobs, hospitality jobs, obviously, that simply don't need it, so people don't get it.
And I think that's why you'd be thinking like, okay, then why are we ranking so high with that fact? Like,
yes. So now the wrinkle is, I think that for people who do have advanced degrees, many of them, either they're from Nevada and they leave Nevada to get those degrees, or, I mean, we all know that people from California love to move here. College in California is extraordinarily expensive, especially if you're not originally from California. But there's other structural factors, like you mentioned, Jesse, just simply the fact that it's extremely difficult to get rid of a student loan once you've got it. You cannot get rid of it in bankruptcy almost ever. And so it just follows you around. And once you have it, to your point earlier about, 17% interest rates, a lot of the times these loans are amortized over the, 20 years or something absurd. They're like a mortgage at some point.
It's crazy.
And so, when you're making $1,500 payments, that $1,500 might be $1,400 of interest and $100 of principal. Of course, you're not going to pay that in any reasonable amount of time because you're almost never paying down that principal loan. So it's just a disaster. And frankly, it's the end result of decades of policy that sort of got us here. And now the people who are reaping the consequences are these borrowers who expected college to give them a better career and are now finding out reality is not so simple.
Yeah. Like for me growing up and when I was coming up through high school and everything, it wasn't necessarily like a matter of like if you should go to college. It was just like you're going to college. And I don't think people understand the implications of what that means. And obviously now even greater importance gets placed on the degree that you're choosing, to kind of to your point of what industry you're going to get into. And that has to be factored in, which begins, I think, with the education of helping kids understand what the return on that investment could look like or lack thereof. And it's like, follow your passions or do what you're good at that's going to make the most money. And maybe you won't love your job, but maybe you'll be financially secure. Like that's what people are wrestling with. But at the end of the day, I think there still needs to be some sort of intervention. As we noted, 17% interest rate. Obviously, that's on the extreme end. No matter what the interest rates are, like if it's more than what people are paying for a mortgage or things like that, that's the scary thing. And I know, look, like it's a business at the end of the day, but people should not be taking advantage of the youth. So like what can be done to help curb this issue that's facing us, particularly here in Nevada? Is there something we can do here? Or is it more of like a federal thing that needs to be, done?
Well, I think if you look at the outstanding student loan debt, that is clearly a federal question. What is legal and what isn't legal is a question for the courts. And right now, that is probably more complicated than ever with the SAVE Act being struck down. And frankly, who knows what's going to end up there because, it is a terrible situation for literally hundreds of thousands of Americans. I think what's also interesting in Nevada is this push and pull between affordability and costs, because just like the cost of living has been going up for everybody, right? The cost of, operating a college or university has also been going up. We've seen this at the Nevada System of Higher Education, NSHE, where over the last 5-10 years, they've simply had to increase tuition, year on year on year, essentially, because they have to keep paying professors and adjuncts and regular faculty. People got to sweep the floors. People got to work cafeterias. There's lots of people who work on a college campus. It's essentially its own little ecosystem of stuff.
Yeah.
And all those people got to get paid. And if the cost of living is going up for housing, for food, for gas, for everything, that gets reflected in the price of a college degree. So you couple that with decades of crazy inflation from the sort of we'll call it pre-recession era. A lot of that is like structural, has to do with the way that federal loans were issued, the way that sort of administrative budgets ballooned, especially at a lot of big college systems in places like Arizona or Georgia. All that gets coupled together. Nevada was kind of insulated from that for a really long time. That is almost no longer the case because enrollments everywhere, right? From K-12 to college are cratering across the system. Yeah. So if enrollments are down, that means your source of revenue is down, but then costs are up. And so if you're a college, like what do? It becomes an existential question of, not just how do colleges survive, but sort of like, do states want to keep funding public higher education? Nevada in the next 5 or 10 years is going to have to answer some serious questions with real dollars over whether or not it wants to fund its higher education system seriously or not.
There's so many ways to tackle this. Everyone's got an opinion on it. I feel like we want to make sure we're doing this more, getting you, our listeners, involved more too. So like, we'd love to hear from you guys, because this is obviously such a hard topic to tackle. What are some of your guys', solutions to this? How would you go about solving this? And particularly here in Nevada, maybe there's a solution that you feel is unique to our situation. We'd love to hear from you. So send us an email at lasvegas@citycast.fm. Again, that's lasvegas@citycast.fm. We'd love to hear your thoughts and kind of your take on how we go about tackling this issue. Step into the movies with the Neon Museum's new movie tour in the heart of Las Vegas. Take a guided walk through real neon backdrops that have lit up some of Hollywood's most memorable scenes. It's perfect for film lovers and Vegas fans who want to see the city through a cinematic lens. You can explore glittering neon landscapes that have actually appeared on the silver screen and see how Las Vegas has been portrayed in classic films and modern blockbusters over the decades. Discover how the La Concha lobby was a key setting in Martin Scorsese's 1995 film, Casino, and stand where Robert De Niro and Sharon Stone filmed their romantic evening as Ace and Ginger. You can trace even more movie history from pre-code Hollywood all the way to contemporary blockbusters to discover how Las Vegas earned its reputation as the entertainment capital of the world through film. Hear insider stories and fun trivia that bring these movie moments to life and capture unforgettable photos surrounded by the glow of real Hollywood-used neon. Join fellow cinephiles on a one-of-a-kind tour that turns the Neon Museum into your own movie set. Get your tickets today at neonmuseum.org. All right, let's keep it moving and talk more and more about how society, the world, everything is changing and how AI kind of plays a role in that. And it's hitting home here, and now it's hitting the Strip in a sense. A new company called Hey7 just announced the launch of an artificial intelligence platform designed to help casinos identify and keep their highest value players. So I guess the big fish are not, sheltered from AI infiltrating things here. And here's basically the idea of how this is going to work. Traditional casino loyalty programs, they typically look backwards, okay? They analyze what a player has already done. With Hey7, their platform actually goes a step further by actually communicating with players in real time, gathering information about their preferences, travel plans, and gaming intentions. And then they use that data to build a more fuller picture of what that player is and what they want. So just an AI profile on the biggest spenders in Las Vegas. They say the goal is to help casinos spot high-value customers earlier, tailor their offers more precisely, and essentially automate the kind of personalized relationship building that used to require a human host. The company's pitch is that player development has already reached a scale that humans alone simply cannot manage, which raises an interesting question about what that means for the people who currently do that in casinos right now across Las Vegas. Because look, we're a city that was built on hospitality, and now AI is kind of infiltrating that. And I think that's kind of like creating a weird dynamic here. How do you wrap your head around like introducing AI into something that is such a personal relationship between any spender, big spender or not, and a casino host?
I do think it's so funny that they're targeting this, if I'm reading it correctly, towards whales, right?
Yeah.
Like essentially like, hey, here's an easier way to track your biggest spenders. Which is so funny because, I mean, the casinos have spent decades refining this into a fine art more than anything else. And so what could the AI present? And I suppose the real thing is just data, right? That there's so many small decisions that a human mind makes during the day that are captured by your phone and internet cookies and AI scraping data bots or whatever that could never be captured by another human being because they'd have to be with you all the time.
Yeah.
And so I suppose there is utility in that, right? If you're a business and, want to spend less money on hosts or what have you. But I also think that if you're looking at people who spend that much money, they're not necessarily, like rational spenders.
This is very true. This is true. Yeah.
And so I think it'll still always matter, I think, to have a human person to give those perks to you, right? Because that's a relationship. Relationships matter. People can have relationships with robots, as the AI boyfriends and girlfriends have taught us all in the last couple of years.
Also true, yes.
But it just feels like, I don't know, there's a je ne sais quoi that's irreplaceable with the relationship that a whale has with whoever's given them those perks.
Yeah. My thing is like, so I have a couple friends that have been in the industry as hosts, promoters, you name it. And like for years, they've been using VAs and implementing AI chatbots and things like that into talking to their guests. Now, some of them big spenders, some of them the general public. And for the most part, people don't know that they're communicating with, AI in some way, shape, or form. Obviously there's ways that you have to make sure you have like a opt out or whatever it is so that they know like they can opt out of these automated texts in a sense. But like you're still kind of making sure the lower level tasks are handled. And that's where I think something like this comes in handy to streamline that and take a lot off of the plate of some of these hosts. But again, like the human element is the part that like, in so many industries, whether it's a real estate agent or whatever it is, where it's like, oh, but the human element is what makes us different. Like that's what differentiates you. Because at the end of the day, everyone offers the same service. So I wonder how they balance using the AI and then also using like the personal side of it, the connection and things like that when these whales are actually here. That's going to be fascinating to see if we can get, I don't know, maybe some data or just track it. But I wonder, like, if this from the outside looking in kind of hurts our reputation because of our background of hospitality. And, everybody's saying, like, this is a city that was built on hospitality. One thing that never goes away is the hospitality in Vegas. The service everywhere is great. Like, do you think it impacts that side of it much?
I think it does, but it's not necessarily the AI per se or the AI alone. I know a lot of people who work on the Strip. I think anyone who in Vegas knows a lot of people who work on the Strip. Not naming names or anyone, but when the Strip properties or when major properties end up getting bought out by big investment firms, there's a shift that happens. And I think the customers notice. I think the employees notice. And because it's ruthless in a way, right? When you maximize efficiency, I think you do have to ask, like, what does efficiency look like? And there are occasions in which inefficiencies are actually good for a customer, right? Like inefficiencies could mean that you feel better about the product that you're purchasing or enjoying or whatever. And so when those inefficiencies are stripped out, it actually feels bad. And so this is one of those where I think there are ways in which AI totally makes sense. I think everyone's been on the phone with customer service and now especially has been like realized that after about 30 seconds they're being bamboozled by an AI voice. Like you thought it was real, but it's not. And you're like,
you're like, wait a second.
Damn. And I think when that happens, you feel cheated. You feel like you were lied to. And that's bad, right? That's as we'll call in game theory, a negative play experience, right? And so when I think eventually casinos, hospitality, they're going to wise up to the fact that people feel that way. They feel like when they thought they were interacting with a real person and realized they were interacting with an AI, they feel like the wool has been pulled over their eyes, and that's bad. So that, I suspect there will be a middle ground somewhere. I think of the great fast food kiosking of the last 10 years, where there were suddenly many kiosks, and now they've dialed it back, and there is a happy medium between having people go to the real line and having people go to a kiosk, because you just can't do the kiosk thing. You can't automate it all away when we're talking about service.
Yeah, I think it's going to be so interesting because, again, like the human element, like, because a lot of gamblers, too, when they come, like, even though they lose, like, they still look at it as like, we paid for a good time. And would that take some of the good time out of it if you're not able to sit there and converse back and forth with a human at the tables and things like that, and not necessarily build the relationship, but just have that, human element, the back and forth there. That's what I wonder of, like, how much that would affect the bottom line for them. So I could see the check-in process and a lot of those things be automated and AI be implemented into those things. But I don't think we're ever going to see just like robot dealers everywhere. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. But God,
even if they switch to robot check-in, like, how am I supposed to slip a 20 to the robot for a room upgrade? What?
Saving some money, I guess, right? For everybody, even the customer.
I suppose.
Yeah, it's going to be so interesting to watch and see how it's done. But hopefully, AI doesn't ruin the Strip. We already think it's going to ruin everything. So hopefully they figure out that happy medium, just like the grocery stores seem to have figured it out. In the meantime, though, Jacob, thanks, man. This was a lot of fun. Again, another really interesting set of topics that we're diving into here.
Thanks so much.
That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our free morning newsletter as well. And don't forget, you can support this show and get great perks by becoming a CityCast Las Vegas neighbor at membership.citycast.fm/Las Vegas. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Until then, though, take care.